Welcome to the Party Starters podcast with me, Kane Towning.
I know you're gonna dig this.
Hello people and welcome to the Party Starters podcast with me, Kane Towning. This guest is Mr. Ibiza and I could literally sit and listen to his stories all day. He's been there since the very early Ibiza days, the Kevin and Perry Go Large era, and he's still there today working with some huge brands, the likes of Defected at Eden and various other projects on the island. He started out as a PR, giving flyers outside a restaurant, and has worked his way right to the top, working with some mega brands and all the superstar DJs. He knows them all personally, and I get some juicy gossip from him towards the end of the interview. He's also spent some time in Leeds back in the Victoria Works days, bringing some huge names to the city, the likes of Deadmau5, Carl Cox, probably the biggest names this city has ever had. He's fascinating. Like I said, I could listen to him all day, so it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the Party Starters podcast, Nick Ferguson. Nick Ferguson, how the devil are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. Good to hear from you, mate, and appreciate you having me on your podcast.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. I'm going to just literally sit here like a fan listening to all your stories because you are Mr. Ibiza and, you know, you've worked with some insane names, DJs, brands, and I can't wait to hear these stories. So let's just get straight into it. It was a lad's holiday to Ibiza where your journey over there started. What happened from then?
Yeah, it was the late 90s. I think I was 16. One of my close friends really wanted to go to Ibiza and had no one to go with. And his mum literally said, you know, I'll pay for your two best friends to go to Ibiza with you. So I was a full-on indie kid from Cornwall. I had no interest in dance music. I thought it was ridiculous music, to be honest. I just didn't really have any interest in it at all. But a free holiday to Ibiza, it sounds great. So we watched Ibiza Uncovered to get in the mood, and I was like, wow, what the hell is this? This is going to be quite an amazing thing. So we packed our bags and we went to this Balearic paradise, and it was insane. It just walloped us in the face from the minute we got here. I remember our first night out, we headed to a place called Es Paradis, which is one of the best clubs on the island, or was at the time, for a night called Clockwork Orange. We queued for hours to get in. When we got in, there was 4,000 people. The dance floor was going off. It was absolutely insane. And then afterwards, everybody ran out and dived into the sea and was all cuddling each other, all random strangers. And it was just a real eye-opener that this was, you know, a scene or this is what people did. Because like I said, I was a teenager from Cornwall. It was just a completely alien world to me. And it's safe to say from then I got the bug, really. I mean, I obviously got the bug for Ibiza, for traveling as I got older, and for dance music. You know, I started getting into it a little bit more. And we came back for the next couple of years on holidays. And then I was going to uni to do a music business degree. It was one of the first ones they offered. It was called Music Industry Management and Marketing. I really wanted to learn the music business, more like record companies, managing bands, the whole industry, really. But I thought during my summers, instead of going back to Cornwall and getting a crappy jobs like my friends do, making pasties and that, I would go to Ibiza and really to have fun, but I guess kind of to integrate within the world of music a little bit, even though dance music wasn't predominantly where I was hoping to end up whatsoever. And yeah, there started my journey, really. I started really at as bottom as you can get. I was a PR for a party, which was in the abandoned zoo. It was called Sundance. It was before the zoo project started. And I remember I worked my bollocks off for a week trying to promote it, as did my team or the team I worked with. And the party was full. And I always remember that going to get paid and the promoter saying, "Oh, not one of you sold a ticket. I've got no wages for any of you." And it was a great eye-opener on really what lay ahead, how hard it was going to be to really grind out a living in Ibiza when it was full of such kind of shady business practices.
So just at that time, what clubs are we talking about? Because the Ibiza now to then, I'm sure, is very different in terms of venues. So what nights are we talking? I mean, you just said before Zoo Project, like...
Yeah, Zoo Project was a couple of years later. I mean, my first clubbing experiences in Ibiza were Manumission at Privilege, which was a beast. I mean, you can't really describe what it was. You know, you had to be there. You literally had to be there. You walked in and there was really 10,000 people. There was 5 or 6 rooms, crazy stuff going on in each one. You know, it is a bit of a cliche story now, but there was Fatboy Slim in the toilets. There was a sex show on stage with the 2 owners. There was just mad guests in every room and every corner. It would go on till midday, and then everyone go to Space for the after party, for the carry-on. Space was amazing. You know, on Sundays, We Love Space was one of the best nights there was, for sure. It was 22 hours straight of partying. So you'd get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, you could leave there at 6 the next day. Cream was obviously an absolute beast in Amnesia, but it was a time when trance was strong. So there was God's Kitchen, there was Gatecrasher, there was Judgment Sundays at Eden. You know, there was a really, really healthy scene. All the clubs had fantastic different nights and such a variety. It was just a fantastic time to be involved, really.
And it was more about the brands back then, like you've just said, God's Kitchen, Gatecrasher, Manumission. Whereas nowadays...
It was like that. Yeah, I mean, it was like each venue, you know, you still had Pasha, Privilege, Amnesia, Eden, or whatever. They all had their own big brands that you went to. You didn't really know who was playing. For me, I was like, I don't care. I don't know who's playing at Manumission, but I'm there on a Monday. I'd not even looked at the lineup at Cream, but I'm there on Thursday. You know, Ministry of Sound was big at Pasha on a Friday. I never knew who I was going to watch. Apparently, the headline DJ was a guy called Mark Hughes. I've never heard from him ever since. And he was the headliner of Ministry, because people were just going to Ministry at Pasha because it represented a certain sound and a vibe that they wanted. So it was really the era of the super club. It was before the DJ was really that big a story, and that was obviously reflected in the fees. Artists didn't command anywhere near the fees that they went on to command when they really overtook the brands in the end a few years on.
All right, well, we'll come to that. So you were spending your summers in Ibiza working as a PR.
Yeah, really just grinding out a living, just selling. I used to stand and say, free shot of your first drink. Every time I sold a ticket, I would earn about €1, which was enough to buy a pint of beer next door in the Zinnemar bar, which became Lineker's, or a tuna sandwich. Like, that was literally how we were living out there back then. Everything was a lot cheaper, you know, the rent and everything. But I was just kind of getting by. I didn't really have a plan to start climbing up the ladder of the Ibiza music business. It was more just to try and sell as many tickets as I can to have as good time as possible. So I worked at Bay Bar on the Promenade for 3 years. I was very loyal. 3 years I stood there every night selling tickets, getting people in the bar. And then I had a bit of a lucky break in 2004. I got to meet Javier Anadon, who still owns Cafe Mambo, who's as big in the game as you can get in Ibiza, an absolute legend. And we hit it off really well, and he invited me to come and work for him in the Mambo Group to be PR manager of Mambo and Savannah. So it was a massive step up. And suddenly I was starting to learn the whole promotion business, the whole spectrum that goes behind keeping bars and clubs busy. And I got to work with proper big DJs, because before I was dealing with bar residents, really. And this was a really exciting thing for me, you know, suddenly getting to know people at Radio 1, getting to know all the headliners that are doing their pre-parties at Mambo. And it was just a really, really exciting time to start coming up the ranks of Ibiza.
And what kind of DJs are we talking about back then? What are the names?
I mean, we had all the Pasha pre-parties, so we were very much dealing with the likes of Pete Tong, when Pete, you know, really was such a figurehead. He still is, obviously, but he was really such a huge UK name. Paul Oakenfold, Oki was an absolute, you know, don then, and all the likes of Sasha, Darren Emerson, you know, the boys that were really big at the time. But also, I had some quite funny experiences. Like, one of my jobs at Savannah was we had a Twice as Nice pre-party, and we had Trevor Nelson every week, and one of my jobs was just to stop girls on the promenade and offer them a free bottle of champagne. It's Carver, really. It cost £1 to come in and have a bottle of champagne with Trevor Nelson. And Trevor, he used to come out and like call me his pimp and stuff. And I would fill the DJ booth with just girls for Trevor Nelson, and that would just put a layer of people into the club, into the bar, that wanted to come and party with all those girls. And we just created things from nothing all the time. It was, yeah, quite a magical era.
So that was your first introduction into the more DJ world.
Yeah, it was. And then the following year, I did 2 years there. Then Kanye around the corner was relaunching, and the boss of Cream Ibiza, Mo Chowdhury, who was an absolute legend, really big and respected in the game, he took over as director at Kanye as well, and he wanted me to come in and kind of bring in a vision for promotion. And we created a program which was pool parties by day, pre-parties at night, and like club parties afterwards. And it was great. We brought over Tiesto Funk from Leeds, which you know well. And we were the first bar in Ibiza to really charge people €20 to get in, because we created a proper club within a bar. And then from working with Mo, I went on to become number 2 in Cream Ibiza and run Tiesto at Privilege and be involved in helping to deliver the Radio 1 events. So this was when I really kind of stepped up to doing the major stuff between like 2007 and I think 9 or 10. Is when I kind of took a bigger job, and suddenly I was really dealing with the biggest artists in the world, really.
Just got to stop you there, because you just say it so casual, and like Tiesto is my ultimate all-time favorite DJ. So you was
no way
PRing, and then you went to work for Kanye to do their promotions, and then you just said you went and did Cream and Tiesto at Privilege, which was an absolute monster of a night. Privilege, the biggest club in the world at the time, and Tiesto, the biggest DJ. So you was programming them shows.
Yeah, I mean, it was really through my boss, Mo, because Mo was a brilliant businessman. He would always get opportunities, but there were big things to run on his own. So he'd bring the projects in and he'd give it to like myself, and I'd bring in a team underneath me, and we would just get on with it. I mean, he didn't really come to the Tiesto events once. So suddenly there was little old me managing the Tiesto events, bringing him in competition winners and chatting to him and, you know, things like that. Whereas 2 years before, I was stood on a promenade giving out flyers.
That's
it was
fucking insane.
It was a big step up, but it was the most amazing learning curve. I owe everything to him because of these opportunities. And then, yeah, we did everything with Radio 1 at the time. So we were suddenly putting 10,000 people into Privilege, you know, putting really the biggest shows in the history of Ibiza together. And then during those winters, that's when I started to think, well, do you know what? I seem to be doing okay at this. Maybe I'm not going to get a career out of being a band manager or working for a record company. Maybe I'm a promoter without even knowing I'm a promoter. Because I still wasn't massively into dance music. I liked certain things, but I kind of saw it as a bit of a product I could sell. And I know that's not a very cool thing to say, and a lot of people listening will probably think, well, that's a bit of a dickhead thing to think. But it's a lot easier to sell something if you can actually look at it a bit constructively. You know, a lot of promoters do fall the first hurdle. They book and promote things that they are musically into, even if it's going to lose them a load of money. So I kind of found that I could look at things from the outside in, because I didn't really care that much about the music. I could just see it for what it was. Is it going to sell tickets? And then off the back of that, I thought, well, what am I going to do in the winter? You know, Ibiza's only busy in the summer. What am I going to do? And a bit of a stroke of luck, really. A massive door opened for me in Leeds, a city I'd never been to in my life. In fact, I don't think I'd even been to the north of England. And I met a very nice man, Cole Dukes and Catherine from Glasshouse, who were hosting the terrace at Cream Amnesia. And they said, look, why don't you come to Leeds, come to our club. We've got a weekly party, a club called Mission. And if you like it, you know, there'll be some work there for you. So I went up to Leeds, 12-hour train from Cornwall. It was the longest journey of my life. And I had no idea that my life was going to change from there, because I hadn't really planned to move there yet. And I remember going to Mission for the first time. And on the Friday, I think it was Tiesto Funk with, I think it was Eric Murillo. And then the next day, it was Glasshouse with, I think it was Daley Padley, who's obviously now hot since '82. Yeah. So I spent my entire weekend in Mission. I don't think I even left the club, to be honest. And then I was on the train back again. And I had the time of my life. And I decided a week later, I was literally going to move to Leeds. So packed my bag, and suddenly I was living in Leeds for winters and Ibiza for summers.
So you're as Cream, Tiesto, Ibiza, and then winters in Leeds.
Yeah, it was mad. I mean, it was a busy lifestyle, but it was nice. I was learning a lot, and I
I
was
mean, just
enjoying it.
just to so you've done them amazing shows in Ibiza. What was it about Leeds that hooked? Because I mean, obviously, the comparing that to what you was just doing in Ibiza.
I mean, I during the winters before that, I'd gone to manage hotels and ski resorts, and I didn't want to do that anymore. It was tiring work. I didn't want a career as a hotel manager. I promised myself I would never weigh a table ever again, and suddenly I had an option to come and be a promoter of a really cool big event in Leeds. It was a nice thing to do for me, and it was perfect to do that in winter and Ibiza in summer. And you've got to remember Leeds in that time, well, you'll know better than I will, it was insane. I mean, it was the best city, I think, in the world for clubbing at that time. I mean, I tried to jot down some notes of the brands that were there at the time, and I ran out of paper. I mean, my first 2 weeks in Leeds, I went to parties called Kiss the Funk, Glass House, Stinkies, Habit, Asylum and Technique, Back to Basics, Dirty Disco, and some others that were also great.
Yeah,
this was all in one city. It was amazing.
yeah, it's insane when you think about it and when you list it like that. I don't think there is another city in the obviously London now as the capital, but yeah, for such a small city as well.
Yeah.
We've always had such a strong platform of events, promoters, and local good resident DJs. So you then became the promo manager for Glasshouse?
Yeah. I was just helping really implement, what the Glasshouse guys wanted really, and help them book DJs and things. And I did it for a year, and it was amazing. Those days were insane in Mission anyway, but Glasshouse was packed. Looking back, it was mad really. There was 2,000 people every week paying 12 to 15 quid to see a headline set by Victor Velasco.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine that now?
No.
Of course not. But then things got a bit interesting, really. I got to develop a really good relationship with the likes of Sean and Terry and Michael, who obviously own the club Mission. And they told me they were launching Victoria Works. They had this vision for this incredible new warehouse venue, really because they needed somewhere to put Federation, their gay brand. But obviously it wasn't going to pay all the costs of that venue. So they needed somebody to come in and book some big DJ-led events. Which was a fantastic opportunity. I always remember that meeting when Sean called me up and called me in the office, and he said, look, I want you to book the biggest DJs in the world into my warehouse venue. Do you think you can do it? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know if I've got the money. He was like, we'll pay for everything. We'll give you a share of the profits. I was like, can I bring my friend Eugene in to work with me? And he's like, yeah, Eugene's great. So suddenly the two of us we were there with a list of the biggest DJs on the world, like we were just going shopping down the road, going, oh yeah, we need to buy that, we need to buy that. And, within the next year, we booked in the first 2 sold-out world tours by Deadmau5, who was the hottest thing in the world for sure. No one had ever heard of him, and suddenly we'd sold 3,000 tickets. It was probably still the biggest profit event I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's mad. And then we did big Cream events. We did Cold Cox with Back to Basics, sold that one out. Paul van Dyk and Swedish House Mafia. We were literally bringing the biggest artists in the world into a rusty old dirty warehouse in Leeds.
That's amazing. And how did you get them bookings? Was it through your connections with Cream?
Actually, no, because I didn't really deal on that side. I was still very much running promotion and dealing with DJs at the event, but I didn't really know the whole mechanics behind the booking process, how agents work, how managers work. I hadn't really raised that level yet. And I took a bit of a punt, I wrote down a list of the DJs we wanted. And weirdly, from memory, the first DJ I think I wanted was Groove Armada. They were doing great stuff at the time, and I heard they were very big around Leeds, but no one had really ever booked them. So I just looked at an email, Steve Hogan at William Morris, dropped him an email, never knew, he didn't know who I was. He just came back with a really nice thing. Yeah, love to work with you. Why don't we look at this DJ? Why don't we look at that DJ? And then suddenly I was booking DJs from the biggest agency in the world. I'd never even heard of William Morris. I had no idea they're the biggest agency in the world. And suddenly they were saying, we want to bring you personally the biggest DJs in Leeds because you've got this great venue and you're doing some good things. And then obviously once you've done 2 or 3 good bookings, it just escalates, and suddenly you can book pretty much whoever you want after that. Well, we were getting agents calling us up then after 2 or 3 shows going, I need to get Paul van Dyk into that venue. You know, can I do it with you? I need to do this. We really want to do something with that. Can we do it with you? And I was like, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, such an incredible. I mean, when you just talk about them names in Leeds in a 3,000 capacity warehouse, it's just crazy. Do you think something like that would work now?
I think you'd know better than me, mate. I've been out of that scene for so long.
I think, but I mean, like when you talk about Deadmau5 and you talk about Carl Cox, I don't think you could even make them pay in them kind of venues now, even a 3,000 capacity venue.
I mean, the game's changed with them. They play for, just the biggest promoters in the world. You know, Live Nation do block deals with them when they buy them for the whole world. They have, and they pay them like 90% of the capacities. There's nothing you can do to compete with that as an independent promoter. But obviously, festival exclusivity means that a B city like Leeds is always going to struggle now to get a kind of A-level headliner, because they'll come in, they'll do their own tour throughout the UK, or they'll just do a major London event, maybe in an arena, and then they'll want to do a festival, maybe Creamfields in the north, but they're probably not going to come and do 2,000 cap show in Leeds these days. But then again, we live in strange times with this virus, and I think it might all change again, and you never know, me and you might be doing events together in Leeds next year for 1,000 people for some of the biggest headliners in the world.
Let's do it. And I don't want to digress too much on that, but I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on the kind of club scene. Do where is the future in that? Because as a promoter, we can't get access to these acts because, like you say, they're doing their own tours, they're doing festivals, and they're just completely outpriced. They're too expensive. So, let's take Mission for an example, which is a 1,500 capacity, not legally, but if you've got a 1,500 capacity venue, it's hard to fill that now without an act. But then you can't get an act because they're too expensive, or they've got these exclusivity deals. So, where is the future with venues?
Well, funnily enough, you just remind me, the last DJ I ever booked in Mission was Steve Angelo, and I paid him, I'm not sure I should really say it, but I paid him 6,000 quid. Right. And that was, a few years ago, and we sold well. We sold out, but we still didn't make that much money then. So what you'd have to pay these DJs now, it'd be completely pointless to do it. But your other point, to be honest, mate, you'd be able to answer that question better than me. You've created brands from dust, really, just by building up your own networks. And I listened to your introduction yesterday on the podcast, and it was interesting what you were saying about supply and demand. You guys kind of created a supply, a demand, your own sound, and then you create a supply for it, your events. I think it's really promoters like yourself that have that kind of foresight to move the scene forward that can do it. And I think it's nice to have attention on the music instead of actually just the big headliners and the big names, because people just follow them around the world. It's nice to have some cities that don't just totally rely on an A-class headliner to have a good night out.
Yeah, I think we've definitely been able to achieve that in Leeds, and we've always been about the brand, building a brand, building as own music. So we've not really been down that path yet of bookings. We've got Made in Leeds Festival, which is now talent led, but only up until this year, we've never ever relied on bookings. We've been comfortably able to sell a 3,000 capacity show on, just our own DJs, our own resident DJs and our brands. So
a lot better profit margin, believe me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's some food for thought. So you've conquered Leeds, and now you go back to Ibiza?
Yeah, I then took, after a few years doing that back and forth, I kind of thought, I don't know if I want to do this forever, the kind of back and forth. It'd be nice to kind of settle down a little bit as I got to 30-ish. And Cream Group offered me an amazing job, which would mean that I would relocate to Liverpool in the winters, work out their head office, and then still do Ibiza in the summer. I ended up becoming the main manager of Cream Ibiza at that time, replacing my boss that I learned a lot from. I also then could do other things for Cream in the winter. So I was involved in their kind of tours, developing the brand worldwide in Creamfields festivals around the world, helping with some bookings at Creamfields UK. And then in time, I ended up helping book on Electric Daisy Carnival as well, because we got bought by the company that owned EDC. So I started to be able to work on some, bigger other projects outside of what I was already doing, but also really helping manage, for me, the best brand in the world, Cream, who was an absolute market leader. And one of the most exciting parts of my job was I was the booker for Nation as well, their club in Liverpool, which was it was clubbing heritage really. And we only did 4 parties a year, but everyone had to feel unique, very special, and had to sell out. And it was a nice challenge being the booker for that for its final few years too. Yeah, it was great.
And what kind of DJs are we talking in this era when you became the Cream manager?
Well, trance has always been very important to Cream, obviously. So we still had a really strong relationship with likes of Paul van Dyk, Ferry Corsten. Tiesto would do bits and bobs, but he'd kind of outgrown brands at that time. And obviously the house DJs, Cream's always done really well with everything from the progressive acts like Sasha and Digweed to all the commercial names that were coming through. And this was really the kind of start of the EDM era. It wasn't music I particularly liked, but suddenly 16-year-old kids were getting into dance music, and Cream, is a commercial business. It had to really kind of cater for that audience. So suddenly we were booking, the really kind of more accessible house acts. But some of these went on to become superstars. Like the best example would obviously be Calvin Harris. When I was with Cream, the first time Calvin got a gig for Cream was because Paul Oakenfold had to cancel a gig. And at the time, Calvin Harris was a band. He had a track called, I can't remember what it's called now, something in the 80s. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, he was a band. He wasn't a DJ. And then he did a couple of gigs for Cream, and he started DJing as well. And my bosses, James and Scott Barton, they had a vision. They really could see that Calvin could become a big artist in his own right as a dance music artist. And a year later, we took an absolute punt on him, really, and made him the resident headliner of Cream Ibiza. And within time, we'd gone from really selling, 3,000-4,000 tickets a week to selling 7 or 8 and completely selling out Amnesia every week. It was the hottest ticket in Ibiza. It was absolutely phenomenal. So it was just a very lively, exciting time of EDM bursting through, Calvin being a megastar, and trance being very, very still at its peak.
Wow, that is an incredible story. So it was Paul Oakenfold who didn't.
Yeah, Paul couldn't make a show at Nation, and I think somehow Calvin Harris ended up being a replacement last minute. Yeah, and it was a bit odd. It was his live performance, and it didn't quite work in Nation at all. But 2 years later, we had him stood on stage to 6,000-7,000 people in Amnesia, completely owning it. And then obviously he was doing stuff with Rihanna, and now he's probably the best paid artist in the world. So yeah, amazing.
That is crazy. So then you just stayed at Cream for quite some time?
Yeah, 3 or 4 more years. It was an exciting time really for the brand. We were doing really well. It got bought by Live Nation, the world's biggest event company, which changed things, a little bit, but we still had the power to run it as we wanted in Ibiza, even though we were working for a big, conglomerate. I got involved in a few things like artist tours. So like we were moaning about them before a little bit, we were part of that. If an artist wanted to come to the UK, we would buy their tour for the whole UK. So the more individual independent promoters couldn't get their hands on them.
So it were you?
Yeah, well, I was part of the problem, I'm afraid. Yeah, unfortunately. But I was still very much kind of focusing on Ibiza, and we had a really good idea to develop Creamfields Ibiza after a while. We knew that we could get it into the market. We knew that it was big. We knew that we could get good lineups on it. And it took a little bit of kind of asking my bosses, can we do it? And one day we had a really positive meeting with the owners of Ushuaia, and we came up with the idea around a table in Amsterdam to do Creamfields over Ushuaia Tower and Hard Rock, which would give us a capacity of 18,000 people. Now, I didn't really think we were going to do 18,000 people, but we did it, and it was probably it must be the biggest event in the history of Ibiza. We had the Prodigy headlining Hard Rock stage, and then we had everyone from, I can't remember, Steve Angello to Steve Aoki to Above and Beyond to Hannah Wants on another stage, and then we had an ant stage which had like all the techno DJs, and we created history. It was quite something.
Wow, that is absolutely insane. You just say it so like casual, like list all these names and all these amazing things.
Like, to be honest, I can't even remember them. I've had to write them all down because I can't even remember everything we've done. So I guess I'm very privileged and lucky to have such a fun and interesting and exciting career. But yeah.
So back then it was definitely all about the brands, like you've said. Nowadays it's very different. You don't really go to a club in Ibiza for a certain brand anymore. You go to see a DJ, you go to see Calvin Harris. Or how did that change over the years, and why was that?
I think the first club to actually do this, really, in my eyes, was Pasha. Pasha pretty much picked a household headline DJ every night of the week. And it was clever at the time. You know, it was Roger Sanchez Mondays. It was Eric Murillo Wednesdays. It was David Guetta Thursdays. It wasn't really about a brand anymore, a brand coming in with 4 DJs and coming in with their own sound. It was very much, this is the sound of our club. If you like good quality house music with nice people, any night you come, you will be surrounded by the right people and the right sound. And then Ushuaia kind of took that to another level when they came in. You know, they very much saw the vision that brands were on their way out. Kids didn't care about brands anymore. The DJs were the superstar, because we were now living in an era of kind of social media, and the brands weren't that good on social media. The brands weren't very good at coming up with content all the time back then. The DJs were. The DJs were constantly on, you know, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, even back then. And they soon became the stars more than the brands. And unfortunately, you know, I realized this when I was at Cream. A lot of DJs didn't want to play for brands anymore, because if you played for a brand in Ibiza, it was kind of a statement, I'm not really big enough to have my own night yet. Whereas if you had your own branded event, Hardwell at Ushuaia, it's a big statement. So all of the DJs coming through, the pinnacle for them, the big target, was to have your own night and not be reliant on playing for a brand. And, you know, that really did become the major change in the end.
Mm-hmm. So looking at where you are now, you've got tell people what you do now.
Well, I stayed with Cream till 2017, and then kind of had a bit of a life change. I got married and we were having a baby, and I decided to buy a villa in Ibiza and properly settle down here instead of doing the back and forth. And it really felt like the right time to leave Cream and start my own company. For everyone involved, really, I think it was kind of coming to the end of the road with Amnesia anyway. And I decided I wanted to have the freedom to work across any project that I wanted, which was obviously difficult when working exclusively for a worldwide leading brand. So I set up a company called the Supernova Group, which mainly had the goal to represent brands, products and artists in Ibiza, which was something we kept getting offered to do. You know, I kept getting people phoning me up going, my DJ's on the island, you know, can you look after him here? Or an agent coming to me going, how do I get my own night here? Can you introduce me to this venue? I want to do this. Or it's the top 100 DJ campaign. Can you manage a campaign on island? And then we had Nokia come to us. They were relaunching their phones, and they wanted us to represent them and get them deals all over the island, get their phones in the hands of DJs, look after loads of influencers. And I soon realized that this is a business. People want to be in Ibiza. They want a presence, but they can't all be here. We could be their presence in Ibiza. We could provide them staffing. We can get DJs the right sets. We could get brands into the right clubs. So in time, we've ended up becoming, you know, the representative of a few different brands and DJs in Ibiza, managing their business on island.
Wasn't that just a complete minefield? Because knowing the politics of this game and how protective people are of their promoters, you know, how have you combated that? How have you managed to work with different brands in Ibiza, filling different clubs, sometimes, you know, competing?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I was told it would never work, but we make sure they don't overlap. I mean, our first contract we got was managing the island operations for Defected, which was it was a really big move for us because it's a fantastic brand. I've always had so much love and respect for Simon and his whole team, and seen that brand, really grow so incredibly in the last few years. But when I was leaving Cream, I had a very nice infrastructure of team, and I was able to move that over to Defected. And that worked really, really well. But at the same time, I was launching a night with Paul van Dyk as well. And both brands were totally fine with each other. Transfer Paul van Dyk and Defected, and they were both in different clubs. They didn't overlap whatsoever. They were totally fine us doing that. And then, we've gone on to do a few different one-off things. We're also like an event booking service. So Privilege came to me. They wanted me to book them a whole big lineup for their opening party. I got them, Faithless, Cole, Sasha, some nice lineup. But I made sure it didn't conflict at all with Defected. It didn't conflict at all with Shine. And we've gone on to develop other things since. We're consultants for a couple other brands. We help Garage Nation, but that doesn't overlap with Defected or Shine again. And we started our own holiday with my partner Dexter called One More Time, which is a classics holiday. And that doesn't conflict with them either. And then I invested in two other businesses. I invested in Acid 87 Clothing and The Alchemist, which is a really cool barber's kind of bar in San Antonio. So we've ended up getting involved now in about 10 projects that we either manage or own, but none of them overlap with each other whatsoever.
Yeah, I'd take my hat off to you. You must be one of the only promoters in Ibiza that's managed to connect them dots without pissing people off and running into problems.
Don't go that far.
I mean, how bad are the politics still bad, is it?
It's about relationships. It's really about relationships. I don't think you should burn any bridges here. I'm probably the only promoter that has worked in pretty much every venue on the island, because we've never really fallen out with anybody. I mean, there's venues I'd rather work with. We've got such a strong relationship with Eden and with Amnesia. We predominantly work with them, but if Privilege want us to really help on something and it won't conflict with the others, then we'd look at it. It's a people business, as you know, mate, and we just try not to fall out with people, try not to step on toes, don't fall into the old days here of ripping down people's posters and telling people, well, if you sell their ticket, you're not going to sell mine, because there's no longevity in that. And just try and kind of work within the ecosystem of Ibiza instead of controlling it, because you just won't last if you do that.
Yeah, it's a great testament to you, Nick, that that you're able to do that and pull it off, and all these mega clubs and brands want to work with you and don't mind you working with other people. It's very, very rare.
Yeah, we've been lucky. We've learned a lot along the way. We've done some projects and suddenly it's led down a dead end, and we're like, all right, that wasn't quite right, or we were too early on something, or we've looked at something, we're like, it's a little bit saturated, we don't need to do that. But we've got to a point now that we're not looking for new business, but you've got to kind of know when enough is enough, and you can only manage enough things. Yourself, you guys are fantastic at what you do. You've got your fingers in a few pies as well, but I think you don't overreach, do you? You manage everything so there's a nice equilibrium.
Yeah, it's definitely a key to the success, to don't take on too much. So going back to Defected, did you take over that when it moved to Eden?
I think they'd done a year in Eden, actually, but I'd gone a few times. I've been watching it, and it was, I was thinking, when I leave Cream and start this new business, I'd still like to, be involved in running one weekly good UK brand, and there weren't that many, obviously, and I really did feel like we could add something to Defected, because it was on the way up. The team are fantastic there. I mean, they really are. And the lineups were great. They were fresh. The music was cool. It was credible, but it was, it was accessible. And I really felt like it was something that we could be part of. But I also believed in San Antonio. I'd always done things, in Amnesia and at the other side of the island. I really believed in doing something for this side of the island. And I really believe that Eden as a club had a nice vision as well. The new owners and the team that work with them, I really get on well with. And it just felt like the perfect move for us. And I was really kind of pleased and honoured that they let us come in and work with them and help execute everything. Because they book everything in their London office. They work all year round on Defected. They book it. They do everything that side. They promote it. And then we implement things on island, And it was just a really nice system and very, very easy to work with the guys.
Yeah, and great timing, because it is just an absolute monster now, especially the Ibiza shows.
Yeah.
So you've pretty much been there from the start of Ibiza. How has it changed to present day? In particular, the price. It's always a hot topic. Is the price? Is people getting outpriced? It just seems to increase each year. Where do you see that going? Do you see people stop going? Do you think people will get outpriced, or do you think it'll go completely to that VIP spectrum? You know, a bit like Vegas. Do you think it'll go that way?
I think that it's always going to be a more expensive place to come than your like Somalia or Zante, because flights are a little bit more, hotels are more because there's more demand for them and they're better. And then once you're here, things are expensive. You know, taxis are expensive, eating out. You can eat cheap, but it is expensive. The thing that obviously adds probably an extra third or half onto your holiday costs here is getting access to the venues you want to go to. Now, you know how this works. A ticket's always going to cost between 30 and 50 euros because the ticket's what pays for the lineup, the promotion and the production. If you're watching a DJ that costs 100 grand with 20 grand of production and 10 grand of promotion, it's going to cost you 50, 60 euros to get into that venue. There's literally no other way to do it. You know, people give the venues a very hard time for charging 10 euros for a bottle of water. I do get that to a degree. That does sound like a ridiculous, unfair amount of money. But with some of the drink prices, I do understand it, because these venues do have costs all year round. You know, a lot of them have a lease all year round. They open for 4 months normally. They normally are busy 3 nights out of those. They might make money 1 night a week. Someone like Amnesia employs 200 people. You know, if you actually looked at the costs of running a venue in Ibiza, and then you add the DJ costs and promotion and production, you would realise it's a million pound investment every week minimum to run one of these clubs. So the costs do get passed down to the customer. Now, there has been a bit of a correction recently, and actually Defected are one of the first ones to do it, which I respect a lot. Nothing to do with us, it's before we came in. They looked at ticket prices and they took them down to 30 euros. In fact, they were 20 euros online, 30 on island. And a lot of clubs and brands have followed since. You know, I've seen average ticket price come down in Ibiza from 50, 60 euros down to 20 to 30 in the last 2 years. And I think they really started that movement. And I think that's a very, very fair price. I think if the clubs could bring the drink prices down more to 8 to 10 to 12 euros instead of 15 to 20, I think that would be, a lot fairer place for everybody involved. But, there is a demand for the top end as well. The VIP market's huge. People drop ridiculous amounts of money. And that will always be there. It's a shame that it does cost people out, normal clubbers. But I don't think that's ever going to go backwards, because the clubs do need these people to pay a lot of these ridiculous costs that they do have.
And do you see the VIP culture just carrying on and creeping into pretty much every night?
The thing is, the VIP culture, it started off with kind of very rich Arabs coming in and spending 50 grand on tables, and stuff like that. And then it filtered down to, well, if you've got a bit of a group of mates, maybe we'll get a table tonight. And if you're taking a girl out you like, maybe you'll get a table. But now it's very much come part of like the weekend millionaires kind of scene, like we call it. You look at Ocean, for example, a place I respect. I don't go, but they've done an amazing job. I take my hat off to everything they've done there. But if you go in there, it's full of people that are earning 300-400 quid a week, hairdressers or whatever, and then they're saving up all their money and they're spending 5 grand on a day there, spraying champagne everywhere, and they're literally getting photos of big magnums of Belvedere just to put on Instagram. This is the VIP culture that's the real problem, I think, and I think it's totally unsustainable, because people work all year to have a week in Ibiza. Well, of course, Ibiza's going to feel expensive then. If you come here and do it a bit cheaper and do it more like a normal person, then you could do it for 2 weeks a year instead of 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some good points there. So I'm just going to touch on a few other things just that I'm interested in as well in Ibiza. What's happened with the boat parties out there? Are they still running? They seem to have died off a hell of a lot.
What you mean in general, the last year or two, or?
When I used to start going to Ibiza, it was always like one of the highlights of the holiday that you would get a boat party. They seem to have just really fizzled out, and I've seen there's been quite a lot of press, I think last year, about banning them and stuff like that. Is that the case?
There was a bit of a change a couple of years ago because on the other side of the island, they were able to do all-inclusive boats, whereas they couldn't in San Antonio, and they were sending teams of promoters over here. So anyone that wanted to go on a boat suddenly went over to Playa d'Embossa, and it was get on a boat, drink as much shit vodka as you can, and then be carted off to a couple of clubs. And it really affected the boat market because the boat market in San Antonio is a lot better quality. You know, the guys that own them and run them are friends of mine, and they've always worked hard to do good quality. You know, the float your boat stuff. Cole Cox has done them. We've done them with Fatboy Slim and with Paul Van Dyke, and we tried to do proper DJ-led ones. But you were suddenly competing with free, unlimited bar ones, and it really just lowered the tone of boat parties. I think when people come on holiday, they still want to tick that box of doing one boat party a week. But I think there is a little bit of a work to do now for boat promoters to make them feel fresh and exciting again, because the boats are still the same. You can still go to exactly the same place. A lot of the time they can't go to Esvedra because of the wind, you know, the sound restrictions. It's quite hard to make them really exciting and feel fresh and new for people that have already done them. But you know, it is something that people like. So I think the demand's there for them to freshen up and still be an important part of what people do when they come out on their holiday.
Yeah, I guess the popular, you know, with beach daytime parties getting much more popular as well, that might have killed off the boat scene. You know,
100%. 100%. I mean, yeah, mate. Sorry, I completely agree. I think the daytime vibe now is so strong in Ibiza. Once again, Ocean and obviously Ushuaia, places like that open up earlier. People do want to party in the sun. Once again, it's good for Instagram. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people party in the day because it means they can dress up with their bikini and, you know, get some nice photos and things like that. The boats kind of look second fiddle now. Also, the sunset time is a very difficult time, and I've found out with my own boat parties that I've promoted because I used to do cream ones. You're sending people out on a boat between 6 and 9. It's too hot to be dressed up then, but you want to be dressed up. You don't want to be getting on it and getting smashed, because then at 9 o'clock, you're suddenly back home. You've got to go for dinner and get ready. And then you've got that period before you go to the clubs at 1 in the morning. But also, you don't really know what to do with yourself in that in-between time. Mm-hmm. So the boats have got a bit of a difficult job to really make themselves feel really exciting right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Ibiza will get more beach clubs? Do you think that's the direction it'll go? And is that affecting the nighttime trade at all?
I think there's enough supply and demand to match each other right now. You know, I don't feel like there's much need for much more. You know, you've seen people like Kathy Guetta really try and invest a lot of money in launching 2 in the last couple of years. That have been a total disaster.
What beach clubs?
Yeah. She's tried a couple which have ended up closed down. You know, it's saturated now, to be honest. I don't think we're going to see that many more spring up. I think the government aren't going to be just giving out many more licenses for any kind of music-related venues anyway. I think it does have a knock-on effect on the nighttime a lot as well, which is a real shame, because for me, the most exciting thing about coming to Ibiza when I was younger was enjoying my daytime with my friends on the beaches and seeing the island a little bit more, going out for dinner at sunset, going to a pre-party, and then going to a club. I feel like the emphasis has moved aside a little bit. And if it's one day out of a week, that's totally understandable. But people that just come here for the daytime pool parties now, I feel like they're really kind of missing that special, USP that Ibiza really does so well.
Mm-hmm. And finally, one of my favourites at the end of a Ibiza trip, well, used to be the West End. What has happened there? Last couple of times I've been, it's just been completely dead. As the restrictions, because there were a lot of stuff like you couldn't PR on the streets, they had to close early. Has that just completely wiped out the West End?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to look at this, because when I first started coming to Ibiza, I loved the Westie. I loved the dirty West End sesh, mate. We would go down the Amsterdam bar, we'd buy 4 bottles of beer and get 3 litre of vodka. We'd buy that each before we went to a club. You know, we didn't even get out of there most nights. So I've seen it develop and change over the last 20 years, probably for the worse. But I think as you get older, your desire for it goes down anyway. You know, the last time I went to the West End, I felt physically sick, and I really took myself home and looked myself in the mirror and thought, what the hell am I doing here? But also, the local council haven't helped it. They've really wanted to change the look of what San Antonio is. as far as Ibiza, within the product of Ibiza. You know, they've seen Playa and Bossa really develop into more of a luxurious resort, and San Antonio's fallen backwards, and the local council have really tried to fight that image. And yeah, they stopped PRs, they stopped all seating outside. I don't know the latest laws, they change it all the time, but I think there's no music, no people outside after midnight, and all venues close by 3. But on the plus side, as a promoter and for the clubs, it feeds the clubs well then. You know, everyone leaves there 2, 3 in the morning, they come to the clubs, and kind of one hand washes the other. That they then go back to the bars the next day because they weren't there all night. They're quite happy to, you know, spend a few hours there, then go to the clubs again. So I think it's better for the future, but it's a shame to see something that was so vibrant and such a gateway for Ibiza just to be so severely damaged so quickly.
Yeah, long live the West End.
Yeah.
Any final words then, Nick, for any young budding promoters out there wanting to follow in your footsteps and conquer Ibiza?
You know, just don't be afraid just to get out here and get any shit job and start from the bottom. You know, like I said, I had no aim to become a big promoter. My aim was to just give out some leaflets and be able to afford a tuna sandwich and a pint of beer after my shift. So if you come out here with the actual desire, the ambition and drive to forge a career out of it, you could probably do even better. You know, you work hard, get on well with people. Don't be too arrogant. You know, a lot of promoters are egotistical and they give themselves bad names quite quickly. I think just come here with an open mind and be nice to people and work hard. And it's a bit of a cliche, but I think you could do whatever you want. You know, the island's your oyster.
Yeah, I've got to ask because I'll kick myself if I don't. But have you got any juicy DJ stories?
I've got lots of DJ stories, but
what's the most ridiculous request?
Let me see. It was quite funny once. I had a call, when I was running Cream at Amnesia, I had a call saying, Nick, can you go to the back door, please? There's a special guest we need to let in. And normally when you say that, it's just a DJ that's not playing for you, but you know him kind of thing. And I opened up the door and Leonardo DiCaprio was stood there with one guy. And I'd had a couple of bevies and I was just like, what the fuck, am I actually seeing this? And this guy just walked in and he was like, right, I'm so-and-so, this is Leo. You don't look at Leo, you don't touch Leo. He wants to come in, you know, but he doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to be seen smoking, and he's going to wear a hat so no one can recognize him. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So I just let him in. Like, I went to shake his hand and he gave me the coldest like handshake. And I was like, oh, you know, people say don't meet your heroes. I'm literally meeting my hero. And I gave him a wristband and thought, well, he doesn't want to be seen. He's just going to vanish into the night somewhere. And then about half an hour later, there's a huge commotion, like people running around the dance floor. And I'm like, what is going on? And I look up from the other side of the club and he's literally in the DJ booth, stood right behind the DJ. He's looking down at everyone. Everyone's looking up and pointing, going, wow, you know, that's Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought, really, is this the way that you want to not be seen? Yeah, that was quite surreal, really. And it was a funny time because we did become a bit of a celebrity hangout. You know, we had an amazing night with Will Smith. Calvin Harris brought Will Smith to the club, which was surreal beyond belief. He was just like the loveliest man I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine he's good.
Pretty much spent 6 hours chatting to him on and off. Even to the point when I was chatting to him and Stephen Gerrard was in that night and his representative came over and went, Nick, can Stevie G have a chat with Will Smith? And I said to Will, do you mind speaking to him? And he said, well, who is he? And I said, oh, he's the captain of England. And he's like, do you mind if I just stick with you guys? So I had to go back to Stephen Gerrard and say, oh, Will's not really up for socialising that much, mate. And, you know, he's going to stick with the boys kind of thing. And we had some fun nights at Paris Hilton in the club, who's not as much of a dickhead as people think she is whatsoever. She's always very sweet and fun. And trying to think who else. Ronaldo, the old legend, used to come down. We call him Fat Ronaldo now.
I was just going to ask you about him. He's quite notorious, isn't he, for his Ibiza trips? Yeah,
absolute legend. And a few others like Tommy Lee, the famous rock star. He came down with Deadmau5 one night. We hung out with him. It was really cool. And sometimes we'd be hanging out with people we didn't know who they were. Then they'd go and we'd Google them, go, who the hell was that? And you'd be like, oh, right. Oh, shit. Is that who I've just been talking to all night? it happened quite a few times. So yeah, no, it was good times. A few little stories there, but I'll save the real juicy ones for a book one day.
Yeah. Well, Nick, as I say, thank you very much. I could literally sit and listen to you all day, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, thanks, mate. It's been fantastic, and good luck with everything.
Welcome to the Party Starters podcast with me, Kane Towning.
I know you're gonna dig this.